Hey, what's up? My hair got wicked long. Anyways, back with the law of power, law 15. Crush your enemies totally. Don't give them room to breathe. And it's pretty straightforward. We're going to go back into historical examples in China. Quick judgment here. Annihilate your enemies. If you don't, they will seek revenge. And I'm going through this right now, which is pretty wild. Anyways, a transgression here. You're looking at two men, Sang Yu and Lu Peng. Sang Yu was not only an aristocrat, but he was a warrior that led his troops. He stood in front of his troops. That's Sang Yu. Lu Peng, he was a man that had many vices. He wasn't from royalty. His father was a farmer, but he knew how to listen to the right people and he knew how to direct others, which led him to some great victories. And this transgression, you're going to see Sang Yu and Lu Peng were kind of on the same side, but they became enemies. In 208 BC, the king of the Chu dynasty sent both men to claim the Qin kingdom. Sang Yu sensed that the person he had set as his commander was slowing his troops down because Sang Yu and Lu Peng were both leading troops to the Qin kingdom to take over Xinjiang. And this led Sang Yu to say, we got to hurry up. We need to move. So he offed his commander and took control of the army, and he beheaded the commander. It was really brutal. But the worst part is Lu Peng, he still managed to be the first one to arrive in Qin's capital, Xinjiang. And this created really a rivalry. Sang Yu's advisors recommended that he should end Lu Peng forever. And so they had a party. And Sang Yu, he had a lot of respect for this Lu Peng guy. So, he was hesitant. He could have ended Lu Peng at the party right then and there, and it would have been that. But, he showed mercy, which, remember, the law 15, crush your enemies totally. This is when he should have crushed his enemy. This is why it's a transgression. This law was not in play here. Sang Yu's hesitance was not good. It granted Lu the opportunity to turn the tables, and that is exactly what he did. Sang Yu was crushed at Lu Peng's first opportunity to do so. He didn't spend any time thinking about being merciful. He ended Sang Yu's army. He did make an escape initially, but there was a massive bounty put on his head, and he wound up offing himself in front of his own troops because he knew that they would just take the bounty on him. And he said, if there's a bounty on me that big, I'm not letting anyone get paid over my body. Anyways, it's pretty straightforward. If Sang Yu crushed his enemy, he would have led on. And his respect for Lu Peng, here's the interpretation of that transgression. Sang Yu's respect for Lu Peng, it proved fatal as his hesitance allowed Lu to turn the tables. And this lesson was a great one for Lu. It led him to win battle after battle, and eventually he founded the famous Han Dynasty. And Lu knew how to crush his enemies. That's one thing he knew how to do. Sang could have written that one down, but he couldn't because the timeline was off. We're going to look at an example of when crushing your enemies was put into play. Because Lu won through battle and accomplishments, and he crushed his enemy the first chance he had. In this one, we're looking at Wu Chao. She became an empress. She was a beautiful young woman at one point. She wasn't born into royalty, but she wanted that power. So she wound up seducing the current emperor's son, Cao Sung. And she was one of the imperial harems, and she schemed once Cao Sung took the throne. Wu Chao was living in the concubine, when she eventually gained trust of Cao Tsung and they actually let her hang out around the castle, Wu Chao eventually gave birth. And Cao's empress at the time was sort of friends with Wu Chao, and Cao's empress actually visited Wu Chao and her baby, and immediately after the empress left, Wu Chao smothered her baby, ended the baby's life, and placed blame on Cao Tsung's empress. And everyone believed her because the empress was a bitter, jealous person, wanted the attention. So the empress was actually set to be executed, and was. And Wu Chao ended up being, I guess you could say, promoted to empress. So it was Empress Wu. And she eventually took throne, actually, and she would not let any of her kin even have a taste of that power. She did everything she could for her sons, her daughters, to make sure that they were never taking the throne from her. Empress Wu, did rule in China for 4 decades, and she ruled in relative peace and harmony. She is very well respected in China. We'll look at an interpretation of that observance, so that whole story. It's really, really basic. Empress Wu, she crushed her enemies. She never let her kin take her power. She never let any of the other beautiful women in the imperial harem concubine, she never let those women ever step over her. She took her opportunity, seized it, and she was a very able and effective ruler with energy and intelligence. She totally crushed her enemies, never left them a chance. Brutal. Couple keys to power we want to look at here. Number 1, crush your enemies. They wish ill upon you. Number 2, key to power, have no mercy. Number 3, you can boil an army of 10 down to 1, but if you don't boil the enemy's army to 0, they're going to come back twice the initial threat. So you have to crush your enemies. Number 4, destroy the enemy, seize their possessions, remove any aid and comfort they have in their lives, completely crush them into total destruction. 5, a hold barred earns you an opportunity to lose. A hold barred earns you an opportunity to lose. Number 6 here, keep this in mind, key to power. Giving your enemy leniency after a victory, that can spell destruction, as they spend years plotting revenge. Let's look at a quick reversal when you don't really need to crush your enemies. So this is something, certain people with their personalities could be self-destructive. So when you notice that in your enemy, that's a reversal. When you don't need to crush them, because they're going to crush themselves. So sometimes you could ignore your enemy. On the battlefield, it looks more like you might have some troops cornered. And when this happens, the troops, they're fighting for their life, so they're going to fight twice as hard as they would when they're cornered. In this situation, you may allow for an escape, which will tire and furthermore demoralize your troops, the enemy troops, from the retreat. So, if you could demoralize your enemy, that'll crush your enemy to nothing, because they won't have the courage to come back. This makes sense if you're sure they absolutely cannot recover. And that one was pretty interesting. So never give up, crush your enemy, and enjoy success. There's Law 15, 48 Laws of Power. Have yourself a good day.